Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that can make a newborn's very first meal a life or death situation. We're talking about esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula. You absolutely have to know the stuff, not just for your exams, but for the little lives you're going to be taking care of. All right, let's start with a puzzle. Imagine you're in the NICU, a baby has just had its first feed, and suddenly they're in major distress. There are these three classic, really scary signs that should set off every alarm bell in your head. So what are they? And why are they so critical? Let's get into it.
Okay, so to really get what those signs mean, we gotta look at the anatomy. This is a congenital defect, something the baby's born with. And it basically, it short-circuits their whole ability to eat. It turns what should be a simple first meal into a total crisis. So what we're looking at are two separate problems that, a lot of the time, show up together. First, you've got esophageal atresia, or EA. That's where the esophagus, the food pipe, just doesn't connect all the way down. It literally just stops, ends in this little dead-end pouch. Then there's the tracheoesophageal fistula, or TEF. That's a whole other issue. It's this weird abnormal connection, like a tunnel, between the esophagus and the trachea, the windpipe. And yeah, more often than not, a baby has both of these things going on at once. In the result, it's a disaster. The baby tries to drink, the milk goes down, hits that wall, and has absolutely nowhere to go but right back up. But it's worse than that. If there's a fistula, that milk is also spilling right into the lungs. We're not talking about a little spit up here. This is immediate aspiration, and it kicks off this whole terrible chain reaction of breathing problems. Now, what's interesting is that this isn't just one single condition. There are actually 5 different ways this can present, 5 main types of EA and TEF. But when you look at the numbers, you'll see one type just completely dominates the statistics. It's not even close. Yep, a whopping 85% of cases are what we call type C. And this is that classic combo we were just talking about. The esophagus ends in a blind pouch, and there's a fistula connecting the bottom part of it to the trachea. Seriously, if you're prepping for an exam, burn that 85% number into your brain. It's a gimme. And this brings us right back to our puzzle from the beginning. What are those 3 scary signs? They're the classic 3 C's: coughing, choking, and cyanosis, that bluish tint to the skin. You'll see this happen especially when they're trying to feed. On top of that, look for tons of frothy saliva, almost like bubbles, because the baby can't even swallow their own spit. These are massive red flags you absolutely, positively cannot ignore. Okay, so you see the 3 C's, the alarm bells are ringing, you're pretty sure you know what's going on, ES-LNF TEF. Now what? How do you prove it? Because the clock is ticking and you need answers, fast. Well, the very first thing you're going to do is actually a pretty simple procedure you can do right at the bedside. You try to pass a nasogastric tube, an NG tube, through the baby's nose, down the esophagus, with the goal of getting it into the stomach. But it doesn't get there. The tube just stops. It hits a dead end about 10 or 12 centimeters in. It's physically hit the back of that blind pouch. And when that happens, you're almost certain you're dealing with esophageal atresia. The next step is an X-ray, and that's what gives you the final proof. The picture is usually super clear. You'll see that NG tube all coiled up in the pouch, unable to go any further. But the X-ray tells you something else that's really important. You look for air in the stomach. If you see a little bubble of air down there, you know there has to be a fistula connecting the airway to the stomach. If there's no air in the stomach at all, it probably means you're just dealing with the atresia without a fistula. But here's the thing. Finding EA/TEF isn't the end of the investigation. It's more like pulling a thread. This one defect is often a huge clue that there might be a whole bunch of other things going on. And this is so important, especially for your exams. So listen up. The second you see ETA or TEF, your brain needs to immediately scream vectoral association. It's a classic test question because these problems, they tend to travel in a pack. Vectoral is basically a mnemonic that works as your clinical checklist. V is for vertebral defects, problems with the spine. A for anal atresia. C is for cardiac or heart defects. TNE, well, that's our tracheoesophageal fistula and esophageal atresia. R is for renal, kidney problems. And L is for limb defects. If you find one of these, you have to go looking for the others. It's that important. So you've got your diagnosis. You're starting to check for all the vectoral stuff. Now it's go time. We're in the most critical phase, and there is absolutely no time to waste. Let's be crystal clear about this. This is a surgical emergency. Period. The only fix is an operation to connect the two ends of the esophagus and close off that fistula. And it has to happen. Like now, within the first 24 to 48 hours of the baby's life. But before the baby even gets to the OR, your role as the nurse is everything. Your number one job, above all else, is to prevent aspiration pneumonia. So what does that look like? You're keeping the baby's head elevated. You're constantly suctioning that pouch to get all the saliva and secretions out. And the baby is strictly NPO. That means absolutely nothing by mouth. We start IV fluids to keep them hydrated, and we give antibiotics to try and protect those fragile lungs. Okay, so surgery's done. Now the focus shifts a little, but the intensity is still at a 10. Your job now is all about protecting that brand new, super delicate connection the surgeon just made. Any sectioning has to be incredibly gentle. You do not want to mess with that suture line. The head stays up, and we reintroduce feeding so slowly. We start with gavage feeds. That's a tube that goes right into the stomach, long before we even think about trying oral feeds. Getting through the surgery is a huge win, for sure. But it's not game over. The road to recovery is long, and it means being super vigilant and watching out for a whole list of possible complications down the line. So what's on your radar? You're looking for any sign of a leak from the surgery site. Think fever, signs of sepsis. You're watching for a stricture, which is when the esophagus gets too narrow as it heals, and that makes swallowing really hard. You're also monitoring for GERD or reflux, which is super common in these kids. And you always have to be on the lookout for the fistula coming back, because if it does, you'll see that classic coughing with feeding all over again. And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. The surgery, it's this one incredible, heroic moment that fixes the physical anatomy. But what really, truly determines if that child is going to have long-term success, it's you. It's the moment-to-moment, meticulous nursing care, both before and after the surgery. The positioning, the suctioning, the careful feeding, the constant watching. That's what paves the road to a healthy life.